Alright, let me show you what we're going to do today. We're going to be creating a program, a custom add-in here that'll take these GPS points, which are around streets, with some interior rings here that are around lakes, and calculate the area of those things. So it'll end up looking like this, and it should give us the areas out there. It'll fill those in to where they look something like this. So cool. Hopefully you already have your ArcObjects SDK in there, as well as ArcMAP add-in and Microsoft Visual Studio Community. So we'll hit New Project. We'll make ArcMAP add-in. This will be ArcMAP add-in 4. As far as add-in types, I'm going to add a button there. As a picture for our button, we are going to use this arrow. Actually, let's use something really unique. We'll just look for a ring image. It's one ring to rule them all. Looks pretty good. We will save that picture as TH just in our downloads. Minimize that for now. We're just gonna go to downloads and find TH. There we go. Adding controls, the button type add-in. We'll add the same thing here just to make sure, and we will hit finish. So this will open up our new project, and the first thing we want to do is make sure that when we click that ring image that it opens up the Windows form we'll create. So we'll go here to button, we'll view the code for that. Right under here under current tool null, actually first we're going to go here to the add-in, and we're going to add a new Windows form. Make sure it's called form. We'll call it form 3. We'll call it ring form. So we'll go back to our button here, and what we want to do is we want to type in ring form my form. That's initialize a new instance of the ring form called my form, and we're going to want, when we push this button, for my form to show the dialog. Okay, cool. Now we're going to save all that, and we can close out of that. Here's where we actually build our form. So we're going to want to add 2 buttons here. Down here in our properties pane, the properties of those buttons will show up. So we want this button to say compute. Make that real nice and big there. Actually, just going to hit Control C, Control V. We'll make a copy of that. We'll move that down here. We want this second one to say close. We're going to want somewhere to see our areas, our outputs. So we're just going to drop a list box there to make sure we've loaded the right layers. We're going to add 2 combo boxes here, and then above those we will add some labels. We want this to be whatever our GPS box is, GPS points. We're going to copy that, and we want this to be our land polygons. Now we are going to call these GPS box and land box, just so we know. GPS box, that'll be our design name there. Land box, that'll be our design there. So what we do want to do is we want to look at the code for these. So we're going to go here to ring form. We're going to hit view code. It's going to give us this. First we want to add in a few references we're going to use. We're going to use Esri.ArcGIS, .ArcMap UI. We're also going to use Esri.ArcGIS.Carto, which does not show up. That's because we haven't added a reference for that yet. We also want to use Geodatabase, We also want to use geometry. And that should be good. So now to get those kind of loading and making sense, we're going to right click on references, add reference. We're going to search for Carto. We're going to check that. We're going to search for geometry. We're going to check that. We're going to search for geodatabase. We're going to check that. And I don't believe we added any others. Let's add display just in case, because we are going to want to refresh the display. So we'll hit OK. We'll add those references. Go ahead and add display here. Cool. So first thing we have here is underneath form 1, but before it initializes, we're going to declare a few global variables. We want to add an IMX doc. We're going to call that PMX doc. We're not going to assign that to anything. We want to add an IMAP called PMAP. We want to add 2 I layers. We're going to call those GPS and land polygon. We're going to add an I feature layer 2 because we want to interact with that. Land feature and GPS feature. We want to add an I feature that we'll use locally. We're going to call that P feature. So we're going to use that several times to kind of recycle some points we've selected. And we want to add some I tables because we want to interact with these things and their attribute tables. We're also going to add an I active view so that we can refresh that. And last but not least, we're just going to initialize an integer count there that we'll use in some of our loops. We also are going to be using 2 dictionaries. So we're going to use a dictionary with a string as the key value and a list of integers as our string there. We're going to institute 2 of those, water. So we're going to initialize those. It's going to be a new dictionary string list, and then that initialize our new component. We're actually going to copy that, go right under it. We're going to create a second one that's identical. We're just going to call it land. Cool. So under our initialize component here, we are going to assign some of those things as soon as it opens up. So we want our PMX doc to be ArcMAP, whatever document is loaded in ArcMAP, we want that to load as an IMX document. Then we want our PMAP to be whatever the focus map is of that document. And we want our count to be the number of layers that show up there, so we'll access that property. So we've assigned those 3 things that are under initialize component. Now, there's nothing else here for us to type. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to load that form. So we're going to go back here, just going to double click on the background. In the form 1 load, so, or in the ring form load, excuse me, when that form loads, we're going to run a for loop. So we're going to use integer I when that equals 0. As long as it'll run for as long as I is less than count. We'll add 1 to I for every loop. So this is going to cycle through each layer. And we're going to do that by taking an I layer or a local layer called P layer. And it's going to be, that'll get the local layer, whatever that is, at I. So whatever is at the I count there. We're going to create a new string. We're just going to call that name. And that's going to be whatever the name of that layer is. And if that name happens to be GPS, which you'll notice if we go here, that is the name of the layer we're looking for. We'll also do a similar one for land polygons, but if that name happens to be GPS, then I'd like you to take the GPS box, change that text to the P layer name. I would also like you to take the GPS layer and make it that P layer. So that I layer that we've selected that's named GPS will then become this I layer GPS up here. I would also like you to initialize the GPS feature layer as that same layer, but as I feature layer. Layer 2, whatever it's listed as, up top, and initialize the table as well. So all of those things from the select layer we selected here by name have been added into these variables up top here. We're going to do literally the exact same thing. So we've closed our brackets, another if statement. If name equals land polygons, do something real similar. Land box.text equals player.name land, shouldn't be land polygon. The name of that layer, that's going to equal P layer. Land feature is going to equal land polygon as I feature layer 2, and land table is going to equal land polygon as I table. Cool, so we filled in a fair amount of those. Clean that up a bit. A fair amount of those variables up top there. So now let's go to what happens when we click our buttons now that our variables are filled in. We click our close button. That should perform the action close. That's pretty simple. Go ahead and save this. If we click our compute button, this is where our actual program goes, and we'll type this in 3 loops. So I'll go ahead and comment that out so we can label each loop. Our first loop, we want to make sure everything's clean every time we click our program. We don't want it looping through multiple times and giving us L1 through L7 areas multiple times. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to clear the values in our dictionary. We're going to clear land. We're going to clear water. Those are our 2 dictionaries. So those are clear. Now we want to clear that land polygon layer so that every time it doesn't stack polygons on top. We don't need this attribute table having 0 through 6 and then 7 through 14 every time we click our compute button. So we're going to go ahead and clear those. We're going to start a new variable here called row count. This is going to equal however many rows are in that land table. So we'll access the row count property. We're going to count with no filter. Now we're going to add our if-then statement, or if statement. So if row count does not equal 0, then run through this series of stuff right here. We're going to go, if it doesn't equal 0, then for integer j equals 0. J is less than row count. We're going to set j equal to 0 again, so we're going to have to delete from the beginning and delete the 0 index row, then the 0 index row, then the 0 index row until there are no rows left. We're going to go ahead and get that row. We're going to have a new I row called get row. That's going to be land table get row j. We're going to take the I row and we are going to delete it. We're going to count the rows again to reset our variable. We're going to set that the exact same as we did earlier. And we are going to refresh our active view. So our P active view equals PMAP as I active view. P active view dot refresh. There we go. That should clear out all of our rows and make sure that's clear. Now we're going to go outside of that loop. So we're going to, down here, this is going to be our second loop. Our second loop, we're going to go through and we're going to collect all the data out of these rows. We're going to collect from our GPS layer the polygon it's assigned to and the FID, and we're going to associate those in our dictionary so that L1 will be our key and 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 will be in our list of integers. And then let's say we look, W2 will be in our water dictionary, W2 will be the key, and 34 through 41 will be our list of integers associated there. So we're going to institute a new integer here called FID count. That's going to be coming from our GPS layer. That's going to be the same row count there. And be our number of total points in the GPS layer there. 4 integer I, will use that locally, equals 0. I is less than FID count. I plus plus to go through that loop there. And that'll loop through every row in the GPS table. It'll take that I row and we'll call a new I row field row. And that's going to be GPS table get row, and we are going to get row I. From that row, we're going to have a string. We're going to call that poly ID. That's going to be that W2, L3, whatever was at the end there, however you've named yours. And that's going to be our field row at our value of index 2, because these are 0 indexed. So if you look at these, this is going to be value 0, 1, 2. So we're going to get value 2, which is going to be that third row there. And we're going to save that as a string, actually, just to cast that and make sure that's what we want it as. So it's going to be as string. Now we're going to create an integer. That's going to be our FID value. That's the integer at the very beginning there. We're going to go ahead and cast that as an integer. And that's going to be, so those are two ways of casting things. And that is going to be integer at the value of 0. Alright, now we're going to have two booleans here that will tell us whether we need to add that to the water dictionary or the, I'm trying to say here, the water dictionary or the land dictionary. So we're going to check and see if the water dictionary already contains the key that's found in the poly ID. We're also going to see if the land dictionary has that. So those two booleans should check for that when we use them. And we're also going to have a string of type. So that's going to tell us what type of ring this is, whether it's a water key or a land key. And we're going to do that by extracting the L or the W from the front of those layers. So we'll cut these down to whether it just says L or W. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to take the poly ID and we're going to take a substring from it that starts at the 0 index and is 1 character long. That's what that 0 and 1 are. So that'll cut the front off of those. And here's our if statements that determine the flow of our code. So if the type equals L. So if it's a land type, what I want you to do, and real quick, another one, if land add equals false. So if it's of type L and it doesn't already exist in the dictionary, then what I want you to do is to take create a new list of type integer, and we'll call this FID list. It'll be a list of all the FIDs. And that'll be a new list integer. Initialize that. And we'll take that FID list and we'll add to it the FID value that we've extracted in this loop. And we will add to our dictionary the poly ID and the FID list. So it's got to be in that list form to be able to add it to our dictionary, because our dictionary requires we have a list of integers to add to it. So that is if it does not exist. Now if it does exist, institute an else statement here. If it does exist, then I would like you to take the key poly ID, and to that list that's associated with it, I want you to add the FID value. That's it. We're going to do the exact same thing for water. So we'll come outside of these brackets. If type equals W, and we can basically copy all of this right here. Except we're going to change this to if water add equals false. We have the new list FID, add value. We'd like to add that to our water list. If not, we'd like to add it water here. And so there we go. So if type W, it'll do the same thing. So that should add it to both of our dictionaries. And that'll be the end of that. And then we'll start our third loop. So there should be, in theory, 3 brackets underneath this. 1, 2, 3. Just delete that to make that cleaner. We'll go out here. Let's see where this one closes. If you highlight that, it should highlight the other one. So that's going to close the second loop. So now we're going to go into our third loop. For our third loop, these are where we're going to start using our query interfaces. So if you're not familiar with those, I'd look those up. But my guess is you're watching this, you're pretty familiar with the object model diagrams and how to navigate between those when writing custom ArcGIS programs. So for each string key, we'll create a new string called key there. In land keys, the keys for the land dictionary, we're also going to need to change that to a list so that we can navigate through that. For each of those, what we're going to do is we're going to create a few things real quick. We're going to start an iGeometry collection called new polygon or new poly, and that's going to equal new polygon class. We are also going to create a new iFeature selection called pfeet select. That's going to equal GPS as iFeature selection. We're going to have another iFeature selection because we're going to be running this twice, so we'll need a second one of those. iFeature selection 2 is going to be GPS. That's in case we need to run it for land and water inside the same loop. Those will be existing in the same local space. So if we want to select this outer ring and this inner ring separately, we'll need 2 feature selections to do that. We'll have a string called water key, and that's going to equal W plus key.substring 11. And so what that is going to do is it's going to take this L1, L4, and it's going to cut it towards just 1, 4, 5, and it's going to add a W to the front. So you'll notice there's an L1 here, and you'll notice there's no W1. So it'll load as W1, and then it'll check for that. And since that doesn't exist, it'll skip that. But it'll check for an L2 or W2 because there is a W2 associated with that L2. So we've got our iGeometry collection, our iFeature selections, and our string water key. Now we're going to have an integer called count, and we will have that as land whatever that key is we're looking for, count. We'll have an iPoint collection called land ring. That'll be the collection of points for our first ring. That'll be a new ring class. And now we'll start our first loop. So we'll use integer g equals 0. As long as g is less than count, g++. We're going to go ahead and clear our feature selection. And here's where we're going to start. Well, we'll add an integer called FID. Our FID is going to equal our land of whatever key at index I. Now we're going to start what we call our iQuery filters, our search cursors. So iQuery filter, P filter. This is how we're going to sort through our GPS points there. This is going to be a new query filter. This is our where clause. So this tells it how to search. It's going to search where the FID equals FID. And then we're going to select based on that. Select features using our P filter. That's going to be our query filter we just made. It's going to be what's called an Esri selection result or numerable, and we want it to be new because there's not anything we're adding it to there. And we're not going to recycle that. Why did it not reset my... Okay, well, that's fine. We're going to start an I selection here called P selection set. That's going to equal whatever we have selected there. That's a property of the selection we made there. We'll tab that over. That'll be fine. Oh, it's not closing out like that. Oh, because this is... Gotcha. There we go. That makes more sense now. Any little quirks like that, look for reasons those may or may not be happening. Now we're going to start an I cursor. I'm going to call that P cursor. See how I didn't tab over right there? I forgot my... And an I feature cursor called PF cursor. Cool. So now those things are started there. We're going to search through our selection set. So we're going to search through that. We're going to use no iQuery filter because we've already query filtered it. This one should recycle. It'll run through the same thing, and it's actually going to put out the P cursor. So that'll be the end result of that. That'll fill in our P cursor, our I cursor feature there, and then we'll just reload that as our feature cursor. Now, which feature are we selecting? We should be selecting, remember this P feature is a global variable, so it can be reused. If we go ahead and load our P feature, should be our PF cursor next feature, which will cycle through all the features we want to be looking at there. We'll institute a new geometry called, that'll be an I geometry called P shape, and that is actually going to equal the feature property of the features we just cycled through. We want to load that as an I geometry. We also want to institute a point here because we're going to use it as an I point to add it to our point collection. And so we're going to take our land ring that we have. That's a ring class, and we're going to add a point to our ring class. And that point is going to be the shape of the features we selected based on the FID matches from our dictionary. So let's add an if statement here that says if land ring dot point count, which is a property of that, if that equals count. So it won't come to this point until that's true. So if that's true, then we are going to create an I ring called land ring, or first ring is probably best. First ring, because we already used land ring. First ring, and that's going to be land ring as an I ring. Load that in as an I ring, and we're going to close that. So that ring is totally shut off. That ring is now a closed loop. Now we are going to take new poly, which if you remember correctly is our new polygon class. We're going to take new poly. We're going to add that geometry first ring that we just made as an I geometry. Finish out there. Perfect. Now, we know that everything's got a land ring around it. So if the land ring's closed now, we can do a few more things. We're going to go ahead and check to make sure. Create a boolean called true water, and that's going to be if water contains the key, water key. So that's going to check and see if there's an associated water ring with that land ring. We'll put another if statement here. That's going to be if true water equals true. Then we should do the exact same thing for our water ring. So I'll actually, instead of copy and paste, then I'll type that again in case you missed it the first time. We'll institute an I-point collection. It's going to be called water ring, and that's going to be a new new ring class. We're going to have a water count. Water count is going to be water key dot count for integer h equals 0, h is less than count. Water count, we need to use water count there. Water count h plus plus. And then for each of those, we want to loop through with our p feature selection 2 that we instituted earlier. So we're going to clear that. We're going to clear that first. We're going to have an integer FID2. That's going to equal water at the water key at index j. We have the same iQuery filters. I'll tab down for that. iQuery filter p filter 2 equals new query filter. P filter 2 where clause equals FID equals plus FID2. P feature select 2, select features based on P filter 2, Esri selection result enumerable, new, false, new I selection set called, let's see, P cell set 2 equals P feet select 2 dot selection set. I cursor P cursor 2, I feature cursor PF cursor 2, P selection set 2. I'm going to search, no query filter, true, out, P cursor 2, PF cursor to is going to equal P cursor to as I feature cursor. We can reuse P feature because that should select something one at a time, so that'll be fine. P feature is going to equal PF cursor to that next feature, I geometry, P shape 2 equals P feature dot shape as I geometry, I point P point 2 should equal P shape 2 as I point. And now we should add those things. We should add that to water ring. We want to add point P point 2. Same if statement. If water ring point count equals, has it been water cont the whole time? That's okay. I mean, we misspelled it, but that's fine. Maybe those are the only two places it shows up. If that equals water count, what I would like you to do is create an iRing called second ring, and that's going to equal water ring as iRing. We want to close that. And we want to add that to the same new poly we've been adding it to. So this actually will add it to the same shape as the land ring. So there'll be 2 rings as part of that. 2 rings as part of that geometry. So now what we're going to do is we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to want to go here to just after 5. You'll notice 5 here closes this whole feature selection. So we're going to go right after 5 here. Let's go ahead and we'll clean this up. So it's going to be between the end of that third loop and the very outside of the whole thing. Where is it? Anyway, the very outside of the whole thing. So we'll go here. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new feature. We'll actually just call that new polygon. And that's going to be our land feature. We're going to add that to our land feature class. We want to add it as a feature class. We're going to create a new feature. What we want to add is the shape. We want to define that shape. So we're going to add this new polygon to our feature layer. We're going to go ahead and define the shape of that as the new poly. And we're going to go ahead and set the value of that. Set value will not show up. So this is setting the value inside the actual rows there. So we'll go to the fields. We're going to find the field called name. So if you go back here and open up these land polygons, we're editing this. So we want to edit this name feature there. So we're set value of new polygons. We're going to find the field called name, and we are going to name it whatever the key is from the dictionary there. So that'll fill in some of our table fields. We also want to fill in some of those areas. So we're going to have to access the I area. We'll call this area value. This is going to be the value of the new poly. We'll institute that as I area. That'll be a query interface. We're going to take new polygon, and we are going to set the value in new polygon fields find field. We want to find the field named area, and we like to set that as the area val.area. We're then going to want to store this. Now we want it to populate in our list box, so we'll create a decimal. We'll just call it C. We'll cast that to a decimal. And that's going to be, we're going to choose our math function. We're going to round the area val.area to 2 decimal places. Now we're going to convert that to a string. We'll call that string A. String A is going to be convert to string decimal C. We're going to create a new string called string B. String B is going to convert to string the key, and then to our list box, which is list box 1. In those items, we are going to add B, which is our key, plus the words area, colon, make sure you have that space in, it'll look weird, plus A, plus the term square meters. Put a space in front of square meters. And we'll close all of that out with pActiveView refresh. Now, interestingly enough, none of this is going to work the first time. You'll see we have 7 errors here. Cannot implicitly convert type string to bool. Is that going to be line 42? Can I go there? If, see, need 2 things there. Polygon class cannot be embedded. Ring class cannot be embedded. I does not exist in the current context. What is it going to be? 129? A lot of this down here. Normally use I. We'll use G there. That should be gone. J does not exist in the current context. That's going to be in line 158. Probably the exact same thing. J. That's going to need to be an H. And then for these embed interrupt types, what we're going to do are the things we added over here. Carto. Open the properties. We'll go here to true. Change this to false. Geodatabase. Go to true. Change this to false. Geometry. True. Change this to false. Alright, area does not contain, was that probably 187? It definitely does. It didn't load here. There we go. Alright, so now we'll save this. We're actually going to close out of this. We'll open this up in debug mode. No changes saved. We should find the one ring picture we uploaded in here. Sometimes that happens, then you hit it again and it works just fine. And I could add a bunch of breakpoints, and if you need to debug it or have some problems, add some breakpoints and watch your locals, your local variables, and you can watch it, for every section get added to the dictionary and things. We're going to customize Addin manager. ArcMAP Addin 4 is there, but to add that in, we're going to go to commands, and it'll load here in a second. Then it'll be Addin controls. Yep. This is our one ring button. Nope. Add that right there beside that other pretty ring. Close that. Open this guy up. It's already loaded these things that we ask it to before, when the form loaded. We hit compute. Get row J. Interop services. Alright, so that's going to be a problem with our interop. And that should work just fine. Let's try this again. I'm gonna hit continue debugging. Not checking that error code property. Alright, so we got an error here. Great. We get a great chance to debug a little bit. So what we're looking at is this is right under the button one click. So let's see. Let me think for a second. What we want to do right under the button click for integer j is less than row count, j equals 0. Yep. iRow getRow equals land table.getRowJ. And that's where we're stopping there. Okay. We'll stop debugging for a second. No errors, no warnings, anything like that. For integer j equals 0, j is less than row count. Row count does not equal 0. Could have been something that happened just before. Land table.row count, no. Let's try this one more time. Create our Addin manager, commands. Got all the way to the end. Didn't want to refresh the view. Says the p-active view is not, might be null. Well, that's fine. We can fix that real quick. These things are at the end. So sometimes it runs these things in a distinct order. So what I would like you to do is you can actually go up here and copy. Not after the load, I just want after the button click. And I'm going to actually cut all of that. I'm going to go right down here. And let's see. Actually, let's not do that. Let's Control Z that. We're going to take these things here that are loading. And these dictionaries, for some reason, it put this in the middle when I clicked on it. It put it in the middle of that. Which doesn't make literally any sense at all. Cool. Save that. Go over the debug again. So that was really useful. Sometimes when you click on something, line 35, we want this to close out. Line 212, we need to enter the file. Just need to clean up stuff a little bit. That just means we need to add in another one of these. Or delete two of these. Cool. Clean up our brackets. This isn't a problem you'll have when you write code yourself, but if you click on these buttons, it sometimes just doesn't matter where your cursor is, it just throws them in there. Go there. Customize, Addin Manager. Customize, commands. Adding controls. My button. Drop it in there anywhere. Add our base maps. You can see our land polygons got partially cleared last time. So actually if you look at our attribute table, we only have an L1, so that'll be great. Click here, hit compute. I don't know why it's not getting row J there. Let's try one more time. Compute polygon, there we go. There's all of our areas that are calculated based on our GPS points there. You can see it went from 1 to editing our entire attribute table there. So there you go. That's how you can write some custom code for ArcGIS. Obviously you can search object model diagrams and write any number of things you want.